So thank you. So I'm going to talk about the future of Prometheus, or how the Prometheus is the future. Little bit about me. Tom introduced me. Let me check why my slides are not moving. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So yeah. Yeah. So I'm a Prometheus maintainer. I work for Grafana on Cortex and Prometheus. So I'm also a Cortex maintainer. And I was also initially working with Tom, and I will also be working on Loki. So I'm also a Loki maintainer. But I love biking, and I love Prometheus, so the bigger pictures, everything else, I like them. So before we get started, how many of you know what Prometheus is? How many of you don't know what Prometheus is? This is good. How many of you use Prometheus on a regular basis? How many of you totally love it? How many of you don't like it? There's none? Okay, this is great. Yeah, so for those of you who don't know what Prometheus is, it's a monitoring system. Essentially, a bunch of Googlers went from Google to SoundCloud. They looked at the state-of-the-art monitoring there, and they were like, what the hell is this? Where's proper monitoring? Where's my observability? So they were super frustrated that they started building a monitoring system. It was open source. SoundCloud didn't really care about a monitoring system. It cared about its music business. So it was open source from the beginning. And it was really good. I deployed my first Prometheus about 2.5 years ago when it was 0.10, 0.9. I loved it. Even then, a lot of people were using it. People really love it. Like, it just grew. The love just grew. And yeah, coming to the future, we had a target as the Prometheus team. And the target was 20,000 GitHub stars. And after that, we decided we'll go on to bigger problems. And we've reached the target last year. So now we are working on the next big thing in the Prometheus land, which is a home brewing company, which gives you precisely brewed beer. How many of you are excited? Yeah. But, I mean, now that I have that graph up, I will walk through the history of Prometheus, that is the GitHub stars that Prometheus had. So the first thing is like the first blog post came out in Jan 2015. SoundCloud put out a blog post. Hey, we built a monitoring system. But SoundCloud has already been using that monitoring system for over a year, and it has already been open sourced for more than 2 years then. It was always open source. And then that was the first blog post. And about a year and a half later, the CNCF added Prometheus as a project. So SoundCloud donated the project to the CNCF. That was great. And slightly afterwards, in July, they released Prometheus 1.0. This was when I started taking a look a little more seriously. And then, about a year and a half later, we did Prometheus 2.0, like the biggest rewrite of Prometheus. That is the major theme of this talk. And about a year later, Prometheus became a CNCF graduated project. What does that mean? It means that you can use it in an enterprise. But thing was, a lot of companies were already using it, and it didn't really change a lot of things for us. But one thing you need to notice is, even though we have all these major milestones, the community adoption, which you can approximate with the GitHub stars, it didn't really change. Like, people loved it from the beginning. We were continuing to improve it, and people were continuing to adopt it. And yeah, for those of you who are not familiar with Prometheus, this is Prometheus. Prometheus is a very simple system. You might be thinking, oh, wow, that's a lot of boxes. But it's actually quite simple. So essentially, Prometheus is a pull-based system. You have your targets exposing metrics, and Prometheus needs to go scrape those targets. It's not push-based. Like, Prometheus sends a HTTP request and collects the metrics. So yeah, you have your targets, and once Prometheus periodically scrapes these targets, it stores the data in a really good time series database. That is my specialty. I work on the time series database of Prometheus. And once it's in the database, you can alert on it, you can graph on it, you can extract it, you can do analysis on it, whatever. And the thing is, it's pull-based. There's a time series database, and there's alerting and dashboarding. And it's really good. It just works. And it was working for a long time. Like, it was in 2013 or 2012 when they started working on it. But recently, in 2017 or end of 2017, we launched Prometheus 2.0. Like, what was Prometheus 2.0? So essentially, it was built for SoundCloud. Then it came out. Then it had a lot of early adopters. Then we cut a 1.0 release. And then we had an inflection point where thousands of companies started adopting it. And we found out that some of the assumptions that worked before don't work anymore, that we made some, we had some features in it that we wanted to remove and stuff. So we actually went back, looked at all the biggest use cases, the smaller use cases, everything, and we decided to fix everything that was wrong in Prometheus. We actually completely rewrote the storage engine from scratch. We made it future-proof. That gave us like 2x to 10x improvement in like CPU, memory, storage space, everything. But 2.0 is a journey that we are still on, even though it was in November 2017. We're still in the process of fixing it, and we will continue to fix everything that is wrong in Prometheus. We will see what it is. Yeah. But before I get into 2.0 and all the great features, like a project is not just code. We are also a community, and biggest part of that is the team membership. We have a 19-member team now, and we've added 3 more members recently. The great thing about these 3 people are they're being paid to work on Prometheus. So Simon Krasi are from Red Hat. Ganesh, he's still in college. I mentored him over the summer, and now he is working part-time for Grafana, which is great. Yeah, and the other trend that we are noticing is the existing members in the team. They're slowly starting to get paid for Prometheus. It's no longer their 20% project or a weekend project. It's actually like things are moving much faster now. So the other thing that we fixed was the release process. Before a couple of months, it was all like, okay, yeah, I need a new release. Okay, I added this feature. Let's put it into a release. If somebody wanted to do a release, he could go ahead and do it. It's just like you don't do a release every day. It's like a month or 2. It was always by the ear. And it worked great. And then 2.0 came. We were like, OK, let's break this. Let's change this. Let's refactor this. Let's make this all better. Like the code base was super live. There were a lot of changes. But everybody was busy. Everyone was like reviewing PRs, making changes. But nobody was willing to do a release. And yeah, what worked in 1.0 didn't really start working in 2.0 when the code base was in such a high flux. For like 3 months, there was no release, and there were a lot of changes. And I actually took a semester off to work on Prometheus, but then the next semester I had to do twice as many courses. I was busy, so I decided to do whatever, let me do a release, and that release was totally broken. One of the reasons for that is because we considered master golden. It just works. We'll do a release. And people will open bugs and we'll fix them. Like, there was no pre-testing process before a release. And after messing up a release, I felt really bad. It was stressful. So, I mean, I was like, let me fix this. So the past few releases, we've been doing consistently every 6 weeks. The other great thing is we are actually testing this release. Like Grafana and SoundCloud are running the latest RC in the dev environment, making sure everything works. And only after SoundCloud and Grafana says everything works, we are making a release. And things have been super, super stable right now. Yeah, we fixed it. I did say maybe a little too well. What do I mean by that? So essentially, it's 6 weeks. And every time we tweet saying, hey, Prometheus 2.7 is out, somebody replies saying, shit, I just upgraded to Prometheus 2.6 yesterday. Yeah, I mean, we are releasing quickly, and I think that's a good problem to have. So let's see. And I want to give a shout out to Harsh. He was also a Google Summer of Code intern. He's also a student. So he built a complete benchmarking system. So essentially, before every release, we spin up like Kubernetes nodes with thousands of services. And master and the previous release are benchmarked against each other. We compare the allocations, the memory usage, the query performance of each. And only if both of them are like equal, or if the newer release is better, which it usually is, we do the release. Like, we have a proper benchmarking system now. And funnily enough, we found a couple of bugs where we were allocating too much, or we were consuming too much memory, or certain queries were slow that we could find with this. So yeah, I mean, the releases are super good. So tomorrow we are cutting an RC. You will see with a couple of great features. You should definitely deploy it in production. So, how many of you were very happy with the data integrity or like the promises we made in 1.0? So yeah, okay, one person. So in 1.0, we were like, Prometheus is only for operational data. It's okay if you lose your data. All you need is alerts. You wait 2 hours, you get all the data you need for your alerts. That works great for most people, most of the early adopters, but later companies were like, what the hell? And people were like, I want to do a backup of the system. And we are like, yeah, sure, stop your Prometheus, do your backup for 10 minutes, restart it again. Having said that, Prometheus 1.0 is still really, really good. For example, the only person who was happy with the promises still has data from 2015 that still works. And he's like, it works. So even though we didn't promise them, it was really good. We want to fix that in 2.0. The first thing we did was make seamless backups and restores available. Like, this was one of the great things about it. People are backing up and restoring. And even now, we don't make those promises. We're not going to say this is going to be there for 6 months, but we're slowly getting there. And the initial few days were a little rough. We had some corruptions and stuff. But nowadays, we don't see any bugs that are like corruption bugs. So maybe in a few months, we'll be like, yeah, you can store as long as you want. So the future, right? Data integrity, backfilling. Essentially, a lot of companies now wanted to adopt Prometheus. They're like, OK, we have 2 years of data in OpenTSDB, and OpenTSDB goes down more than the system sets monitoring. We want to move to Prometheus. And how do we migrate the data? And we're like, you don't. Or it's just really hard to do it. But in Prometheus 2.0, you will be able to actually write some code and take all the data out and put it into Prometheus. It's in master. It will be in 2.8. The future, which is tomorrow, the first RC will be cut. The future is now. It's actually super interesting how this works. A slight digression into how the Prometheus storage 2.0 storage works. So essentially, it's block-based. All the data from T0 to T1 is in one block. T1 to T2 is in another block. Like, and if you query data from like T0 to T2, you just merge the data from both the blocks at query time. It works great. And technically, it is possible for you to create new blocks and add them before the existing blocks. And it works right now. But ideally, you want to add some extra series or extra data which overlaps with the existing data. And that kind of breaks Prometheus. But Ganesh here made a change recently in the past few months where if there's overlap, we just consider it a big block and we do the deduplication inside. It's actually pretty cool, code-wise also. And apparently it works. We'll know tomorrow. So final thing, a lot of people are like, OK, we want to store terabytes of data in Prometheus. And we're like, please do it. But it's still a single node system. Ideally, as a developer, as a software engineer, I would like Prometheus 3.0 to be the distributed, horizontally scalable version of it. But it's most likely not going to be. But the future will still let you store as much data as you want in Prometheus. You can still do that today. That is through the long-term, like the remote write and remote read integrations. Essentially, Prometheus can write to and read from an external data source. And this data source can be a very scalable data source like OpenTSDB, Cortex, Thanos. And a lot of companies are already using it. We have like 15-ish data sources that you can write to and read from with Prometheus already. And it just works. People have long-term storage. And it also helps keep Prometheus super simple. Having said that, the remote write has a couple of issues. So what happens is whenever Prometheus ingests data, it compresses it and sends it over. Great. What if the remote storage system is down or it's unreachable or there's a network partition? We buffer it up, and then whenever it's available again, we send it again. Having said that, sometimes if you're not careful, the buffer gets too much and it ooms the Prometheus. On the other hand, if the buffer is too small, there's data loss, which sucks if you are an enterprise and really want to store data for 2 years. you don't really want to miss those samples. And the fix is in Prometheus 14 days ago. It will be released in the future, which is again tomorrow. So the Prometheus has a write-ahead log where we actually sequentially write out every single sample to disk before we ingest it. And we can just tail this write-ahead log, and this is how like MySQL replication works. And if the remote is down, we just don't forward the pointer. Once remote is back up, we just stream the rest of the data. This also is supposed to work. Let's see tomorrow. And this is not all of like the great things that we are doing. We added a lot of features. We are still adding a shiny new UI that is in React, and that will reuse a lot of the components from the Grafana's Explore view. So even in the default Prometheus, you get great autocomplete, split view probably, and the whole thing. And it's like the Prometheus UI and Grafana UI are like similar, so that the workflow is not too bad. And Prometheus is actually getting faster with every single release. Like now that we have a lot of things that we wanted to fix, now we are fixing query performance, and we are fixing performance. And the recent feature that we added in the last release was subqueries. How many of you know what subqueries are? It's just, OK, I should probably have included an example, but subqueries, so essentially people wanted to do some advanced calculations, and Prometheus was like, you cannot do them. But right now, you can do whatever you want. It works. So, what? Yep, you can do rate of a rate. Essentially, if you wanted to see the maximum QPS over the last day, you should initially you would have to do a recording rule, wait for a day, and then do the query. But right now, you can just do the query to figure out what was the maximum QPS you had over the last one day. So, the future of Prometheus. What does like? It's in the cloud, and what's next? Let's see. First part was security. Prometheus 1.0 was really, really nice. It said, we don't do security. You put it behind a firewall, you put it behind a VPN. Like, you secure it yourself, you do authentication, you do authorization. And for a long time, our security disclosure policy was open a GitHub issue, which worked. But like we have a proper security disclosure policy now, even though we're still like security yourself. We had a security audit done by the CNCF, and the results was, yeah, everything looks great, but you should actually give people a way to secure things by default. And this is very important in enterprises. The enterprises want to expose a lot of their data using exporters or in the targets. And there's no really good standard way to do it. But when they said, when the security audit came back, we were like, yeah, we know. This has been in the roadmap for like since the beginning. So this is the next big thing that we're going to work on, authentication and TLS in Prometheus and all the exporters, so that only Prometheus and certain authenticated services can scrape your data. But this is just one thing. But the biggest thing is community. Yeah, it's like I mean, I think this is the biggest font I have, so it's the biggest thing. So Prometheus changed the world, but now we need to conquer it. What do I mean change the world? Prometheus brought the labels data model, and now everyone has the tags or labels data model. Like Graphite has it, Influx has it, Prometheus has it. Any good monitoring system nowadays has it. PromQL was great. What do I mean by conquer the world? How many of you are running Kubernetes? How many of you are using Prometheus inside Kubernetes? How many of you are not using Prometheus inside Kubernetes? OK, a few people. But most of the world, if you're running Kubernetes, you're running Prometheus. And that's what I wanted to do. So how many of you, if I ask how many of you are doing monitoring, and how many of you are using Prometheus for monitoring, I want all the hands to stand up. And this is, yeah, we won the cloud native world, but we want to actually win the bare metal, VMs, and everything. Yeah. So part of that is open metrics. So essentially, one of the issues is how many of you tried to migrate to Prometheus, but went like, shit, now I need to go through all my code base, all the thousands of instrumentation lines of instrumentation I wrote, and rewrite it into Prometheus. Yeah, not going to happen. How many of you went through that? Yeah, a lot of people go through that. And this is going to fix it. First thing, the Prometheus exposition format is really, really good. And we are going to make it a standard. It's going to be called OpenMetrics. And if you look at it, it's a text-based format. It has the help information, the type information, and then the actual data. It's super simple. And funnily enough, other people were starting to scrape Prometheus data. Like a lot of the monitoring systems, proprietary, hosted, and including Influx, they were already starting to ingest this metric system. If everyone's doing it, why not make it a standard? But the biggest thing we want is if somebody is instrumenting their code, instrumenting their service, instrumenting their router, we want it to be open metrics so that Prometheus is able to scrape it. So that tomorrow you can be like, this is my list of requirements. Oh, everything can be scraped by Prometheus so that it's easy to integrate. We want to avoid lock-in. So if everyone is going to use this format, you can be like, I'm going to instrument my code base once. I like Prometheus, I'll use it with Prometheus. Suddenly tomorrow you're like, oh, Influx is much better. You just say, type Prometheus to type in Influx in one line, and everything you will be able to send to Influx. So you can actually change all your monitoring systems at will. But the actual reason and the real reason it is invented is because Richie wanted to kill SNMP. He hates SNMP. Give him a beer and he'll talk about it for hours. And what is the status of OpenMetrics? It's a CNCF project. And we are just getting started. Like we know the spec, it's almost written. Prometheus 2.5 has experimental support for it. The Python client has experimental support. We will be slowly adding other clients. And Google and Uber will write another parser. Like Prometheus has a parser now, and there will be another reference parser from Google and Uber. So who committed to supporting OpenMetrics? Like if we have only half the people supporting OpenMetrics, half the people supporting something else, there's no point. We don't want to fragment it. Having said that, all the major monitoring systems and providers all have committed to supporting OpenMetrics, which is great. Yep, that is one part of how we want to take over the world. The other one is by just enabling our community to be better. We already have thousands of exporters in the wild. Like whenever I want to monitor something, I go like Ubiquiti router, Prometheus exporter, and there's one. And I have a ISP at home, ACT FiberNet, and I wanted to monitor it. I was like, let me check. And ACT FiberNet, Prometheus exporter. Somebody wrote a Prometheus exporter for my FiberNet, which actually logs in, renders a Chrome page, and extracts the HTML from it and exposes Prometheus metrics, which is insanely cool. We want to actually add more language support. Like C++, for example, is not an official client library. We want to make it official. We want to actually create a Prometheus community subrepo with best practices and stuff. So the main problem is we have a bunch of official exporters, and we have early adopters. Early adopters, they just go try the new exporters, and they adopt it. But the enterprises, they're like, is this good? Is this good? And they're like, five exporters for MySQL. Which one should I use? By having one community and a set of best practices where everyone supports and everyone checks each other, I think like this will give a lot more confidence into Prometheus and into helping it, like into making everyone adopt Prometheus. But yeah, technology-wise, nothing exciting. I mean, we have a lot of things planned, but nothing major. But community-wise, this is where the focus will be for us. And yep, that is the future of Prometheus. It's the community, and it's us taking over the world. And I would like to invite the Prometheus team members here to come up on stage to take any questions on anything Prometheus that you have. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Come on then. Ben, you don't get out of this. Ben, Super Q, come on. I'm also going to have a couple, is Bartek in the room? Where is he? He's not in the room? Oh, that's a shame. I was going to invite him up. He's kind of Thanos, which is Prometheus and Friends. And Callum, you did the remote write work, so you can come up as well. So there's a Grafana Con track 1 on the Slack. So any questions in there, please? Can we have another wireless mic, please? No one's here. One sec. Testing, testing. Right then, let's get started with questions. There is a few questions already, which is good. The first question, I think this one is for, this one's for Richie. So can we give Richie? So, is it possible, this is from Brian Bresnay. Hey, how you doing? Sorry. I'm going to murder all the names, by the way. Is it possible to export data from F5 Big IP to Prometheus using a different method than REST API calls? It's on.
Yeah, okay.
Talk loudly.
SNMP. It's painful because it's SNMP. It's getting better, so SNMP exporter has made a major leap quite recently. Yeah, that's the only way, really.
Turn up.
Sure.
Cool, thank you. Sorry, just turning your mic up. So.
Complaining to the vendor that they don't support open metrics.
Yeah.
Also, we are also making inroads with network vendors because this is where I'm coming from. So, and my plan is basically once I break the silo and one or two like make this official, the others kind of have to.
Cool, thank you, Richie. So the next question from Sean Lafferty. Where's Sean? Hey, how you doing, Sean? Did I get your name right? Yeah, good. So, any plans to move from Snappy to gRPC for the remote write API? Streaming would be nice. Shall I answer that one? Yeah. So I did the original remote write API. We originally wrote it using gRPC. So the challenge was it was hard to get gRPC to traverse an ELB. I don't know if that's easier, but like the current encapsulation of HTTP with Snappy encoded protos inside is pretty much gRPC to begin with. We're definitely looking on the remote read side at doing something that's way more streaming based because it's really easy to UMA Prometheus with like remote read. We've had to put a load of protections in against that. But on the write side, I mean, there's so many integrations with remote write that I think, you know, correct me if I'm wrong here, guys. I don't want to change the API for remote write. We've just switched. Callum here just did the work to switch to using the write-ahead log, and we intentionally preserved the remote write format while switching that. So, like, you know, Paul in the other track that we can all hear nice and clearly, he's got a remote write ingester into Influx. Like, Influx natively supports that, and we didn't want to break people like Paul and all the other integrations. So, you know, I hate to talk for, like, you know, future-looking things, but no plans at the moment, and probably not. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. I don't want to race to the top, though, because they can hear us as well, so. Sorry? Yeah, I don't want to battle with them. I don't want to turn us up too loud. I'll go and turn the back speakers up in a minute, so hopefully that'll help. Yeah. Yeah, again, if I get too loud, they can hear me. That's the problem, so. Well, I'll go and turn the back speakers up in a sec on the next question. So, the next question from Bob, I'm not going to try, from Bob. What is the best way for new contributors to get involved with Prometheus? I guess, Ganesh, you're the newest contributor. Do you want to give that a go?
The easiest way could be first contact some Prometheus members. Yeah. For me, it was helpful because Goutham guided me. And if you pick up some easy issues and get in touch with the maintainers, they will help you guide your way through the Prometheus, else it might get difficult to get started without having any knowledge.
So, I mean, I've tagged a bunch of easy issues or help wanted or low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
So there are a bunch of those issues tagged. Just pick them up, give them a go, spend like an hour or two digging into the code base, scratching your brain, and then just say, hey, I've tried this out, I've tried this, it's not working, what do I do? And I'm pretty sure we want, like, one of us will jump in within an hour or two on IRC and just like help you out. It's like, we want more maintainers. We're actively scoping out who's going to be the next maintainer.
Thank you. So Ben has the next question. Is that better? Can you hear me now? Yeah, good, okay. Ben has the next question. What is your philosophy for using Prometheus in really big VM ecosystems? Thousands of services and tens of thousands of hosts. I'd say Bartek. Bartek works at Improbable on Thanos, which is one of Prometheus and friends. I think Bartek's probably got the biggest infrastructure here. Talking to the mic.
Yeah, sure. So the question is
Nice
like,
and loudly.
Cool. So the question is like, why would I use Prometheus for monitoring such large VM set? I would say. Well, it's basically it's that just ease of deployment and like ease of usage. You just have a single powerful server that gives you flexibility to monitor and collect like millions of series within just one server. So and no matter like how how fast you move those VMs around, for example, in Kubernetes system, like VMs or containers, it doesn't make much a difference here. It's just super powerful. So I would say that's the key factor. And it's like, and that was actually why we chosen Prometheus like 3 years ago at the company I work for, Improbable. We actually loved the documentation, we loved the community, we loved the quick feedback we get once we added issues on GitHub, and that's the key factor why we choose it and why people choose Prometheus, I guess.
Thank you. So Anthony has what I believe is probably a facetious question, but we're going to answer it anyway. When will it be mandated by law that every service or API exports a metrics endpoint? I think Ben, as an American living in Germany.
Yes. Like a long time ago, I was, when I was working at Google, everything at Google had Varzi, and it was amazingly powerful because I didn't have to think about how to get metrics out of a piece of code, because every piece of code had the same metrics API, and it didn't matter if I was using one metric system or another. It was all about the library and the code, and that's why we're working on open metrics. Is we want to separate the metrics libraries from Prometheus itself, because I don't actually from a SRE perspective and a developer perspective, I don't care if you use Prometheus or not. I want you to use open metrics so that one team can use Prometheus and one team can use Influx. So that's why we worked with Influx and Stackdriver and Uber to build open metrics, and that's our real goal to take over the world. Is I think Björn Robinstein said in a tech talk that Prometheus didn't start with the Prometheus server. Prometheus started with the client library, and we thought about the client library first.
Thank you, Ben. So here we go, another question. I'm kind of jumping about a bit, there's so many. This one's for Grafana Labs and Prometheus. Will Grafana Labs be shifting its focus from MetricTank to Prometheus, or using MetricTank as a backend for Prometheus? I think I'll probably take a stab at that one. It's not about shifting focus, it's about doing both, basically. As one of the whole tracks is about Graphite, and we are definitely still investing in MetricTank. Not as a backend for Prometheus, though. We have another project called Cortex, which is our horizontally scalable backend for Prometheus. So it's more for Grafana Labs about Cortex and MetricTank together. They're both going to be maintained and both continued developed on. So this is a good one. Any plans to backfill metrics into Prometheus or modify historic metric names?
I guess I can do that one. Backfill, yes. We're adding backfill. You'll be able to do that. It'll be great. But modifying, not so much, because you can add a new set of metrics with the backfill system, but you can't really change the stuff that's in there because it's the TSDB is basically write once. So you create a new TSDB block, and that's written out, and it stays there forever. You know, I know that it's annoying that you write some metrics and you realize that you did it wrong, and then you want to redo it. It's not really something that we're planning on supporting.
Can I add something?
Oh.
So essentially, this essentially important kind of problem that people have seen, especially with tunnels or Cortex, where those solutions allows you to store like years of the data, and at some point someone needs right to be forgotten kind of rule. So hey, I have sensitive data here. I need to remove just one metric. And it's expensive in a kind of Prometheus world, but doable, and definitely is doable to create a tool, and probably we end up doing that anyway to rewrite your block, and that's it. It would take some time, but yeah, some use cases like this, like right to be forgotten, change, modify, I don't know, label. Yeah, exactly, are doable and could be designed.
Yeah, I'd say we want to do it. We just aren't doing it yet.
Yeah, like one of the really big use cases for the backfill stuff is backfilling recording rules. So you realize that you needed a recording rule, and now you'll be able to create. Nobody's written the tool yet, but it's now going to be possible to do that.
So Patrick asks, any plan to make the documentation more approachable for beginners? We get this. Let Richie answer this. Yeah, we get this question all the time.
So we already did part of that. CNCF sponsored a tech writer who wrote some docs for us. It's still not there yet, so our docs are more a developer reference and not so much a how-to, which is not good, to be honest. We have this kind of issue where, from our perspective, it's relatively hard to like have this first user story in our heads. We would love to have someone who steps up and says, "Okay, I want to tackle or even own this," and we would be more than willing to help. So, realistically speaking, time-wise, and also just because we're too far removed from beginner stuff, it would be better if someone learned this new and worked with us to write new documentation, like user stories. I need to do X, and you just walk through this and have like this Lego set of building blocks you need to put together to do X. So the concept is ready, but someone needs to do it. So step up. What's his name? Patrick? So Patrick, thank you for coming.
Yeah. Another question, last question, this one. Are there any plans to support dashboards in the native Prometheus UI? I think, should we go to Goutham for this? Well, I guess Goutham works for Grafana, so it's a bit biased, but...
Can you hear me?
We can now,
okay.
yeah.
So essentially, there were dashboards in Prometheus, but I think they're still there, but we're not talking about them. Ideally, you would use Grafana. It's much better. I mean, I don't know. Does anyone here run Prometheus but not Grafana? Oh, one person.
Is anybody using PromDash? No? No.
There is an embedded system called PromDash, which is like static templates that can build dashboards.
No. PromDash was Ruby on Rails Grafana.
Is this not the embedded thing in?
No, the console template. So Prometheus actually does have an entire system of static HTML console templates, and they work okay. They're really ugly, and maybe with this new React thing we can improve it. But yeah, there are a couple people who really like console templates because they can produce it from code and put it into Git, and they check it out. Sorry.
I think that's it. Round of applause, everyone. Thank you very much.